Hello everyone, it is Joe here from OmniPoke, the channel that brings you guys everything Pokemon. Today we're looking at the 4 events that happened over the weekend of the 14th and 15th of June, 1 week before the NAIC, so this is like our last look at decks before we go into the biggest tournament of the year. So I'll be starting off with the 2 slightly larger events. Both of them had just over 100 players each. Jonkoping in Sweden, as well as the Origins Open, as well as 2 SPE events that were like sub 50 players, but still worth noting to see what the top dogs are going into the next tournament. So we'll start off with the top 8 of Sweden, starting off with the winner, Magnus, who was playing a Zapdos Beast build. Interestingly enough, he's moved away from the 4 Rainbow Energies, and instead he's playing 3 Fighting, 1 Psychic, alongside 2 Viridian Forests to, hit them more consistently on turns. He's playing double Buzzwole. Playing no Zebstrika is a little bit concerning for me. I'm still a fan of the Zebra build, but at the moment they're going for... Like, the main reason people play the basic energy Viridian build is they're like, I want better outs to hit my my beast turns, right? I want to make sure I have the Buzzwole turn and the Nihilego turn, which is reasonable, but if you play Zebstrika instead of, like, the Viridian spaces... you have better draw on those turns, and then you're less susceptible to muck. So I still like the Zebra build, but nonetheless, we're seeing a pretty straightforward basic energy build. Playing the Mew in here, good tech card for Pikachu mostly. Also helps out randomly against that Quagnag if they're going to try and Warlord you down. So that's pretty cool. Plays a pretty straightforward supporter line that we've come to know is pretty basic in Zap Beasts. Nothing else too exciting here, just a very straightforward list outside of the conscious decision to play the basic energies over the 4 rainbows. That's really about it. We see teammates Bert Walters, who got second with the greens build of Reshiram, playing a 2-2 split. 2 EV Snorlax so strong right now. Basically, we saw Keon initially played 1 in his regional winning list. Then the DDG guys all played 2 copies, and now that seems to be the bread and butter number. Personally, I like 1 Eevee Snorlax in the greens build over 2 because you don't have Kiawe in this list. So it really means you have to weld it into Welder and then have additional attachments here and there if you're going for chaining Eevee Snorlaxes, because unlike using a Reshizard, you can't just welder attach and smack, you welder attach and pass. So I prefer 2 Eevee Snorlax in the Kiawe based builds, and I would only play 1 in this build. That's one of the only changes I'd want to make from Bert's list. I'd probably want to play 1 Stretcher over the 2 Eevee Snorlax. Obviously, there's a bit of a headache of prizing and stuff like that, which I guess is the main argument for playing 2. That's one of the only cards I would want to change. He had the interesting inclusion of mixed herbs into the list. I saw Pedro, and I also saw Azul testing this out on stream over a couple of weeks before, and Bert's taken that on, and it seems to be the new age way of playing this archetype. It gives you a way around burn and confusion. Well, at least confusion when you're up against Blounds, which is not to be slept on, but also gives you healing that's stronger than Acerola and Max Potion in tempo, because you get to keep your energies and keep swinging into people. So it's a good way of healing whilst maintaining, the board presence of having a Reshizard with 4 energies on it. So that's pretty cool. Everything else, again, pretty straightforward, very similar to Keon's initial list. Doesn't play Lieutenant Surge, just playing the other core supporters. But again, not too much to be said here. Field Blower is still in the list, of course. Yeah, nothing too exciting. It's just a pretty straightforward build of Reshi greens. The mixed herb being the biggest outlier here. A lot of healing in Bert's list. He plays Ace, Max Pot, and 4 herbs. That's really, really heavy on healing. Very, very heavy on healing for sure. In top 4, we see Sander coming back again with his updated Mill variant. He's a player pretty much known for playing Mill, and he is always pretty on the pulse of what needs to go in the list to be successful. In this occasion, he believed Bronzong was the best way to get around the fire decks, seeing as though Stall decks initially came out with Plume, and now everyone adds in Arcanine as a tech Pokemon. So Sander was choosing to have the heat-proof Bronzong, forcing people to commit 4 energies to an Eevee Snorlax that then maybe you can knock out with Stack Attacker or something like that. There's a few different things you can try and do with the deck. You can even just force 4 energies onto a Pokemon that then you can Lost Zone away, and then they can't access those 4 energies again, and stuff like that, So the Bronzong, making them commit resources into an annoying Pokemon is pretty good, and it can wall out some, the majority of a lot of attackers as well. It may force the fire players to add in things like Shining Lugia or Turtonator because they get around Heat Proof a little bit better. From there, I mean, it's just the classic Hoopas, Reggies, playing one Lucario Melmetal. The stack attackers like one include that he had in the deck. It's obviously very tanky if your opponent has 3 or fewer prizes remaining, so he's just a wall in his own right. But with counter energy and counter gain, you can go for that top-down attack, and you can one-shot some threats if you really need to, because it's good at knocking out like Zoros and a few other things here and there with your type coverage. So yeah, good to bear in mind. You've got White Kyurem, unknown hand for mirror matches, basically. And once again, it's a pretty simple shell of the deck. I don't think there's much to be sort of debated about it. It's really like this Bronzong is like the floating space right now that you sort of put in and out based on what you're trying to wall against, if that makes sense, or what you expect people to be teching for. So that's kind of like the spaces that you interchange based on like what you're expecting your opponent to be teching against. Like if you're expecting stealthy hoods, you take out the Vileplume, like we did here. But if you think Vileplume's at a good point in the game again, it'll come back into the list, I would imagine. So yeah, stuff like that's pretty important. Then we move on to Jesper, who top forward with a Pikarom build. It's got, again, the usual suspects in the list. Double to Dene, 1 Lele, double Let Loose. Not playing the other copy of Marshadow, which is pretty interesting. It's got 4 Lily, 4 Guzma, 2 Volkner, 1 Erica's in the list. That's something we haven't seen in a while. It's playing, yeah, very similar to the list we saw from Xander, Rahul, and all the other guys. Yeah, very straightforward, simple build of Pikarom. Not too much to be said on the list either, to be honest. It just looks pretty straightforward. And I think what we're seeing from this, 100-player or so tournament, it just seems like the simple, consistent shells of tried and tested decks are working more often than not. We see another Greens Reshizard from Ilya. And this time it does have the Turtonator. It's also playing a Tapu Koko. This can be a free retreat pivot that you don't often see in the deck, but it can make your Guzmas more live. And just gives you, like I said, that pivoting option sometimes. This one's not playing the Acerola or any Kukuis. It's instead playing a heavy line of Acrobike for additional like consistency, I guess. Still playing the Max Potion. It's playing a double Power Plant to try and really be frustrating for Zoroark and Pikarom players. And it's also playing Shrine of Punishment. This is like a mirror tech card because you can see the 2 choice band there. You can ban Shrine and then Reshizard Flare Strikes through another Reshizard. So relatively mirror tech for a Greens build, which is pretty cool to see. And the Acrobite coming in. So not a lot of heals in this list. And only 3 Volk and like 1 Turtonator. So it feels like it could be pretty risky against some like Zapdos players and stuff. I'm personally a big fan of the herbs that we saw from Bert's list, but Acrobite's also like very reasonable just for giving yourself extra consistency and outs to find Wells and Greens because you're only playing 8 draw supporters and you're really reliant on those over anything else, as well as like the Pokegears to try and dig them out. So that's really it. But the Shrine is a nice tech card that we've seen kind of in and around some of these Reshizard builds to help win Mirror. Once again, Reshizard, so 3 in the top 8, this time from fellow UK player Andrew Emerson. He's playing a Jirachi-based build. He's got the Absol in here to try and slow down other Jirachi-based builds. Not playing any Arcanine, just playing the basic stuff. Not playing any answer to Vileplume at all, actually. No Stealthy Hoods either. But again, everything looks more or less straightforward. It's making the space with double Kukui as well as double choice band. So again, very conscious of winning mirrors, making sure you can one-shot their Reshizards is a pretty good deal right now, seeing as though we saw so much Reshizard in the top 8. Making sure you're having your own techs is pretty important. Still has the 1 Acerola in here. But yeah, seems pretty reasonable. He's actually not playing any Miltank, right? So he has very limited healing options. Really, really aggressive build. Really aggressive. No Miltank and only 1 Acerola is healing. That's pretty aggressive. Yeah, I'm not sure how he has a reasonable Zapdos matchup Something to bear in mind. good at one-shotting other tag team GX decks and other just regular GX decks. Adrian also made top 8 with a Hoopa-based build. It was playing the double White Kyurem, double stack attacker as well, so similar mentality to Sanders' attacking mill option. It even has Baby Buzz and a Buzzmosa as well in the deck, which is crazy. You can beast game GX some stuff, which is pretty crazy. It's playing the Dragonite and where is it? Lance Prism Star package, which is really cool to see. I saw this actually a couple of League Cups. One of my friends was experimenting with it, and that's pretty awesome to see it work. Double Magikarp and Werelord just to sit there and absorb damage, pretty much. So it's a kind of different mentality to how Sander tried to take the list, cutting the Regigigas and just having 4 Hoopas and 2 Magikarp Werelords to soak damage and Lusamine loop basically with it is the plan. It's pretty interesting to see no Lucario Melmetal at all, possibly thinking it's just simply a lost condition when you're up against Reshizard, like you just start it and you end up losing games. So that's an interesting take. I guess the same mentalities could be said for this card though, and he is choosing to play it, so I'm not super sure why there's no like DC Luke Metal, because that pressure of just doing 50 damage a turn could not be slept on. It's actually really good. But yeah, not too much else to be said about the list. Buff padding in here. Wow, that's a chunky Magikarp Werelord for sure. It's got the triple counter gain as well. So yeah, really going in on the counter energy shenanigans and trying to go aggro on Reshizards, I guess. But otherwise you can't really answer. So I'm rounding out the top 8. We see even off with a Dewgong build of Zoroark. I've tested this out a little bit. He is pretty teched out, and from what he said on his own post on Facebook about the list, he said the Giratina was potentially a little bit too cute. The idea is that you can distortion door down Jirachis and other like 70 hit point things once you've done a Dewgong spread. I agree with him though, like you'd much rather have the bench space be committed to just more things that can trade and just having the bench space for Persian and stuff like that. So I'm not a huge fan of the Giratina itself from what I tested with it, but everything else in the list seems pretty like straightforward. Playing Tate and Liza over Cynthia is a conscious decision from him, even though he's not playing a Rangaroo, which is interesting. Giving yourself that extra like pivot option, I guess. Playing Devoured Field as a stadium card is another thing that I'd possibly question. It's good if you're expecting like basic energy builds of like Baby Buzz and stuff. But you could also definitely consider Brooklet Hill just sneaking into the list so you can have extra access to seals early on, because Dewgong's best when it's attacking turn 2, basically. Playing 8 energy, the 1/1 Persian line, Larvitar in here for Mirror, as well as Pikachu, of course. So yeah, it's interesting to see Dewgong coming to the forefront. Obviously, with Blacephalon GX doing a lot better, Dual Blizzard being able to one-shot them with a choice band, whilst also setting up something else on the bench is really awesome. You can jump B-strings with this card as well, if you really want to, so Dewgong could do some cool stuff to get around Blacephalon GX and have a really strong matchup. So if you're expecting Blounds at the NAIC, the Dewgong build's probably the one that's most equipped for Blounds. Other Zoro builds pretty much all have unfavorables to Blounds in my like experience, so that's pretty interesting. Not sure how strong it is against Reshizard. I think it's usually fairly weak to Reshizard. But obviously he made top 8, so I'm sure he's beaten a couple along the way. You just got to get pretty cute with the Dewgong. We also see a Zoro Dewgong by Owen Kammerman also just fall short of top 8. And we even see Shedinja Control make 9th place as well, so not an archetype to be sleeping on at all. We didn't see... Well, we saw the Reshizards all play like 1 field blower. The Pikachu still plays 2. And then like Zapdos is just playing like the ropes and Guzmas and stuff, so... Not all of these Zoros were playing like Guru either, so Shedinja Control with like a good amount of reasonable matchups. As long as you can put yourself through playing the deck, it could do well at NAIC. I actually think it's pretty well poised, to be honest. The rest of the tail of the top 32 or whatever, lots more Reshis, a good amount of Zoroark made it, to be honest. We see Zoro Persian, Slowking, Zoroark even making it. 1 Blacephalon, pretty low down, to be honest. Not much Blounds at all. You see Carl Blake with Ultra Mally. We see a Weezing down at the bottom. And we see Benjamin Barons and Tord Reklev both playing thick Persian lines of Zoroark. I haven't tested this out yet. I'm going to actually test it on stream today. But it's kind of like a Vespiquen style build. 27 Pokemon. I can only imagine he's trying to get Vengeance off like a good amount of times. He's playing Shrine as well as Choice Band to try and even push your numbers against even tag team Pokemon. So really interesting to see Zoroark incorporating Shrine now, saying Zoroark is flimsy enough to die to every tag team anyway. Let's just try and get their health into a bracket that we can like try and one bomb back, which is pretty cool. He's playing Persian as well as Oranguru, so he's pretty well teched for stall here. All part of his like 27 Pokemon that you can just throw away for Vengeance when you really need to. So yeah, very, very thick Zoro Persian lines. He's still got the Muck, of course. He's got Mew in here as well for Pikarom. And yeah, he's going back to an Elms Lecture based build. Playing 3 Dedenne means that you can like find an Elms turn 1 and then Dedenne your hand away to like get yourself into Zoroarks, and it can also have extra means of like discarding Pokemon to try and turbo out this Persian quicker. So very, very interesting build from Tord. I mean, he's playing Olivia, for goodness sake. Like, something's going on here. The fact that Olivia can get you a Zoroark and a Dedenne is actually pretty cool. Gets you like 8 cards. So that's awesome. I guess it gets you like a Persian, which gets you any 2 cards as well. So yeah, 3 Dedenne, 3 Lele. That's pretty much like the most consistent way of seeing Zoroark we've had in a while. He's also playing Nanu. I guess the main mentality is that you are Leleing for Elm a lot, and you're using Dedenne a lot to draw cards, and then you'll end up nanoing them into a new Zoroark at some point in the game. It also means that you get to play a Dark Grimer to give you defense against like missing Ditto Grimer turn 1 or whatever, and someone grinching it out. So really, really interesting list from Tord, and you can see it got 32nd, 25th, and 15th place. So a handful of these guys all took the list, and yeah, this is interesting. Definitely something I need to look into because I haven't quite figured out like how you're tackling some of these matchups. It's one of these things I'm gonna have to learn by playing what you're trying to do in some of these matchups because it looks very, very interesting. So potentially the Tord Spice will be becoming a factor for NAIC. We go over to Origins. We only see the top 8 here. It was 126 Masters, also won by Zapdos. In fact, Zapdos was in the finals against each other. Danny Altavia coming out with a win. We don't know his list just yet, but we do see Will's list. I took a look at this earlier as well. It's playing the 1-1 Zebra line, which I can definitely respect, but it is pretty like teched out with all the Ultra Beasts, not just Buzz, Nihilego that you expect to see. Also Kartana and Pharaoh Buzz, which is potentially like a good mirror tech. As well as Absol. So in theory, he's like heavily mirror tech. So it's interesting. I'll be really interested to see Danny's list to see how Will didn't win the finals when he's like kind of double mirror tech, right? Absol and Ferrobuzz, 2 like techs side by side for mirror, which is interesting. Just playing 4 Lily, 4 Guzma, 2 Cynthia. Only 9 energy and no Volkner makes me a little bit nervous. But yeah, we are seeing the Thunder Mountain still in the list, of course. So yeah, again, just a relatively straightforward shell going on here. I think the only real like creativity from Will's list is going all out on the 4 different Ultra Beast options in here, as well as Absol being here for Mirror, which I think is definitely a good shout if you are going to NAIC, seeing as though it's kind of come back in a good way when it's got a first and then a first and second over here, and it's done reasonably in these SPEs as well, I believe. Grant Manley brought the Spiritomb, Umbreon, Honchkrow deck to the table. It has a bad Zapdos matchup, which is a bit of a worry. But it's a pretty cool like rogue that's trying to use Honchkrow to just literally just auto win some Zoro and some Weezing matchups just by having Ruler of the Night. Zoro would otherwise be very difficult for you because they can just muck out your Spiritombs, which is like your main means of damage via building Spite. Obviously, you can maybe try and like Umbreon and knock out Mucks and stuff, and then try and build Spite that way. But usually, I found Honchkrow is the better route. I actually put a list on this on the channel. I play Honchkrow as well as 2 E-Hammers, and it just stonewalls Zoroark usually because those turns they Guzma and get an energy attachment, you can still just hammer them away or whatnot. Or those turns that if they go first, they can attach to a Zorua before you evolve up and stuff like that. So I think the Honchkrow double E-Hammer just hard carries the Weezing and Zoro matchups, which is awesome. And then for everything else, like the tag team matchups and stuff, you're trying to use a combination of Spiritomb and Umbreon. to sort of uptrade on them. It's got a similar feel to a Zapdos deck, to be honest. He is playing Elm's Lecture, something I am not a huge fan of. I played the Lily Nestball base build. Lily Nestball gives you higher odds to get a Rangaroo and Jirachi when you're getting hit with Let Loose, as well as like Lily just drawing you more cards. Elm, though, does secure multiple Spiritombs on board, and one like loss condition for this deck is not finding enough Spiritombs. So there becomes a point in the late game when you've only had like 2 turns to build Spite to be able to do damage. So the Elm is trying to secure a bunch of Spiritombs all at once so you can build Spite a bunch of times and make sure you have enough damage in that late game. So that's the whole reason there. Beyond that, there's only a couple cards that I kind of question. The Adventure Bag's kind of questionable because Hustle Belt's only ever required like mid to late game, I would say. Because it's been like 3 turns of you building Spite for it even to be live. So yeah. But yeah, you can see my rendition of Grant's list on the channel if you want to already. Jimmy and Pram both played Weezing. Definitely something to keep on the radar. I guess they were hard calling a good amount of Zapdos and Blounds and stuff like that. One Blounds did make top 8. It was a non-GX version from Nathaniel. We don't see his list right now, but yeah, there's been some touting that non-GX Blounds is going to be like back in some respects for the NAIC. If people are expecting lots of Reshiram, lots of Pikachu, and even to some extent lots of Zapdos, it's actually like not a bad play at all. It's kind of weak against a lot of the fringe stuff, and it just doesn't like seeing Field Blower and Let Loose and stuff like that. So there's obviously reasons why non-GX Blounds isn't doing like that great, but if you're expecting those 3 decks to be like the top 3, and even Zoroark to an extent, no, Zoroark's pretty hard. They have Muck and Judge, yeah. So Zoroark's a bad matchup for that deck, but the tag team decks and Zapdos are technically not like bad matchups as long as you survive Let Loose. Over in Auckland, like I said, just 31 Masters, so it's like a League Cup, but I guess more competitive by the people like trying to hunt points. Henry Brandt was able to win with, once again, Zoro-Dong, so we see a good amount of Zoro-Dewgong do well. I'm more of a fan of his lists than Ivanov's, to be honest, simply because there's not the Giratina in here, but I think that's just about it. Also, 3 Choice Band is really, really high on the count. To try and make the most of Dual Blizzard, which I can also very much respect, because to be effective against a Reshiram, the Dewgong basically needs Choice Band, so you can hit 180 on it to try and like set it up for stuff. Also means you're pretty strong against the Blounds once again. Not too much else to be said. It's got the 1 Acerola, double Judge, no Cynthia, which is interesting. But the 444 usual Ball Search counts, double Rescue Stretcher as well is an interesting one. So yeah, pretty straightforward list from Henry, really making the statement that Choice Band is mandatory on the Dewgong most of the time, which is pretty reasonable. Still has that Larvitar in there for the Pikaroms and whatnot, so that's pretty cool. There's only one other list that we can have a look at, but Zapdos once again making the finals and also featuring in the top 8 once again. A couple of Reshizards, another Zoro Dewgong, one Weezing once again made it, and an attacking Hoopa made top 8, which is interesting. But yeah, we get to see Matthew's list here of Reshizard, if it'll load up. It's a Jirachi-based build. It's got the double Vulcan here, which is pretty interesting. Normally you just see 1 copy of that. Got the Miltank, good lad. Not too much else to be said. Not playing any Kukui, but it is playing double Choice Band at least. When you play the Choice Bands at the very least, it means that you can like Outrage with Band, or you can just Outrage without Band and then just attach the Band to one-shot Pikarom. Like, set up a Pikarom and then hit them with a big Flare Strike afterwards. So even when you're not playing Kukui, the Choice Band is definitely helpful in mirror matches and stuff. And the double Band means you're like pretty favoured against Pikarom, I would say. So yeah, pretty simple stuff there. And then we just go over to the Cape Town tournament. Once again, only 27 Masters, so take these results lightly, I guess is the best way to put it. But essentially, it's more confirmation that 3 Reshizards are doing well, 2 Pikaroms in this case. We see a Gramble. We see a Silvally list. Now, I really wish we had a list to see that, but also a Zoro Silvally ended up coming out on top. He was playing the 2-2 Silvally, 1-1 Persian. He played double Dojo and some fighting energies in here, which is like something I was really surprised to see. Obviously, the cool thing you can try and do is... Oops, not this card. You can try and use Silvally's Turbo Drive to then like attach fighting energies to your bench guys to increase their damage output later, which is actually pretty cool. And it also means like if you're going first or whatever, you can get an attachment of a fighting onto like a type null or something like that, and it means that you can like use a memory tool plus a dojo to be a math fixer. to knock out Eevee, Snorlax, and Reshizard. So it's like in addition to the Kukui plays that you can make with the memory tools, you have the dojo as like a potential way of responding on these tag teams, which is pretty cool. Not something I've seen before with a Silvally based list, and it's something like I've tested a bit of Silvally, so I'm like a fan of trying to play it. But it's not something I've really considered before, so making use of that dojo is a pretty cool deal for dealing with those tag teams, because usually you're hunting for that Kukui in addition to a tool, and usually you need like Persian to help you get there, and it's not always that easy. So yeah, interesting build of Zoro Silvally taking the win. I think overall, we can have a look at the metagame breakdown on Limitless, like updated. Reshizard still out on top, Zapdos, Pikarom, Weezing still doing pretty good. We're seeing the greens build also like fight on its own here. I've separated the decks into variants as well, so Reshizard still doing real good, the Jirachi builds and the greens builds. I think the greens builds honestly have been picking up a bit of popularity recently. I think as we've seen Zapdos like creep back up in strength, like they were kind of kept down for a couple of weeks just because people were expecting Stall so much. But there's so much fire that even with Zapdos rising, Stall is a risk. So I think the greens build is kind of becoming more and more popular because they have either herbs or they play max pot ace. And they also have a bunch of Volcanions that makes life difficult for the Zapdos to get through. So I can definitely foresee a reason why greens is sort of coming back right now. Zoro's still diversifying. I think we still haven't found the perfect list for Zoro just yet. There's a lot of experimentation going on. The Zoro Persian claiming a lot of points this weekend with Tord and a few others making top 32s with it. But then there's also like Slowking to still be argued for. Dewgong that's starting to pick up the pace as well. So there's all sorts of things. Silvally as well taking a win in Cape Town. So lots to discuss. It's going to be really interesting to see how it shapes up for the NAIC. Right now, I think the things that I'd be on the lookout for, I really like Green's Reshizard. I think you just run the risk of losing to Let Loose like one every couple games, but you will always get 3 games in with the deck if you lose one early because you're a fast deck anyway, so you don't necessarily mind just losing to a Let Loose game 1 and then just trying to like win games 2 and 3 anyway. And I think your matchup spread's probably the strongest as long as you tech for Mirror. And I would also like look towards Zapdos, not necessarily a beast-based build. If you are going to play beasts, I would want to play Kukuis so you can beat these baby Volks and you can have a better time against Weezing and stuff. But potentially a Zapdos that plays maybe like Jolteon to beat Weezing. That's my hot take. So yeah, let me know what you guys think about the results over the weekend. What was your favorite list topping? Do you really take note of these SPEs, even though they are like sub 50 player tournaments? Even to an extent, these regionals and the Origins event were only, you know, just over 100 players each. So you can't read into them too much. I mean, there's a different spread of people attending these regionals at this point in the season. It's basically people chasing top 16 or top 22. And also people who like still need that invite, so it's like a strange blend of people actually attending the tournaments at this point in the season, and it may have an effect on what's actually doing well as well. So lots to discuss, but yeah, that's it for today guys. Hope you did enjoy, and I'll be back for another video tomorrow. Cheers.